Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're tackling something literally everyone faces, but honestly, we barely ever stop to think about it. We are going to decode the modern cafe menu. I mean, if you've ever stood in line at a packed coffee shop, staring up at that massive board of Italian-sounding words, just kind of wondering how it all connects, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to explore the fundamental building blocks of coffee and map out the espresso family tree. By the end, you'll know exactly what's going into your cup.
So, be honest. Do you actually know what you're ordering at a cafe? It's a real question. Coffee menus can be incredibly overwhelming, right? With all that specialized lingo, it's so easy to feel like you're just throwing a dart at the board and hoping for the best. But here's the secret. That giant, complicated menu, it's actually just a handful of simple variations on one single theme. Once you grasp the basic components, the whole thing translates into this very logical, super easy to understand system. I promise you, by the time we finish up here, you're going to have a perfectly simple way to navigate literally any coffee shop in the world with total confidence.
To get there, we are going to break this down into 3 simple steps. First, the espresso foundation. Second, playing with water. And third, the milk classics. Okay, let's dive into this. To decode the menu, we really have to start at the beginning. Section 1, the espresso foundation. This is the absolute base of our coffee family tree and the core ingredient of almost every single drink on the menu. If we're going to decode the menu, we have to precisely define what an espresso actually is. At its core, it's just a small, highly concentrated shot with a remarkably rich flavor, and it's made through a really specific method, forcing hot water through finely ground coffee under extremely high pressure. That combination, the high pressure and the superfine grounds, is what makes it so unique. It gives you this bold, intense taste in just a matter of seconds. And because it's so quick to make and packs such a concentrated flavor punch, this tiny little beverage is literally the foundational anchor for almost every modern coffee shop today. You know, this foundational drink originated in Italy back in the early 20th century, and it completely revolutionized how we drink coffee. Like I mentioned, it absolutely relies on that high pressure and finely ground coffee to get its signature profile. But visually, the absolute hallmark of a properly extracted espresso is that beautiful, distinct layer of golden crema resting right on top. That crema is the visual signature of the high-pressure extraction, locking in all those rich aromas. And really keep this in mind, because everything else we talk about today builds directly on top of this golden-crowned Italian-born foundation. Right, so now that we have our foundation, we're ready for section 2, playing with water. We're going to look at how simply manipulating water completely alters that espresso base. The most famous example of this is the Americano. The formula here is incredibly straightforward. You take our standard espresso shot and you just add hot water. Simple, right? But that one addition completely alters the drink. You end up with a much larger beverage that has a smoother, lighter flavor than a straight, intense espresso shot. The Americano is a massively popular choice if you're wanting a longer, more sustained coffee experience, something to sip on for a while, but you prefer to keep dairy out of the mix. The history behind the Americano is actually fascinating, and it totally explains the name. The drink is heavily linked to American soldiers stationed in Europe during World War II. See, when these soldiers encountered those small, highly intense Italian espresso shots, it just wasn't what they were used to. So they diluted the espresso with hot water to make it resemble the larger, lighter, drip-style coffee they drank back home in the States. It's such a great historical anecdote, and keeping that story in mind provides a fantastic mental anchor for remembering exactly how an Americano is constructed. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it illustrates the delicate physics of the brewing process itself. Instead of adding water after the shot is pulled, what happens if we change the amount of water used during the extraction? Well, if we use less water and a shorter extraction time, we get a ristretto. This is a tiny, sweet, highly concentrated shot with a silky texture and way fewer bitter notes. It delivers a truly memorable, intense experience. But flip that around. If we allow more water to pass through the grounds for a longer time, we get a lungo. This longer extraction brings out a lot more bitterness and complexity. In fact, in tons of European cafes, a lungo is the go-to alternative if you want a stronger tasting, larger cup without just dumping hot water in at the end. Just by tweaking the water volume during brewing, we swing the whole flavor pendulum from sweet silkiness straight over to bitter complexity. Let's move to and see how this builds into the final major branch of our family tree. Section 3, the milk classics. Yep, we're adding dairy to the equation. When we start talking about milk-based drinks, it honestly all comes down to basic anatomy and ratios.
let's compare two absolute heavyweights of the cafe menu, the cappuccino and the latte. So, for a cappuccino, you're combining your espresso base with steamed milk, but the key defining characteristic here is a very thick layer of milk foam on top. That specific balance gives you a really rich yet smooth taste. On the flip side, the latte uses espresso mixed with a much larger amount of steamed milk, but topped with only a tiny, thin layer of foam. It's all about that ratio of liquid milk to airy foam. That one single variable is what separates a rich, foam-heavy cappuccino from a highly creamy, mild latte. And just like the Americano, the cappuccino comes with this brilliant historical origin story that perfectly brings its visual identity to life. The name cappuccino actually comes from the Capuchin monks of Italy. And why is that? Well, because when that espresso and milk foam are perfectly balanced, the resulting light brown color of the drink visually matches the specific shade of the robes worn by those monks. It's wild, right? That visual similarity totally coined the name for a drink that has since become a massive morning favorite in cafes all around the world. Then, looking back at the latte, we get a completely different experience. Because of all that steamed milk volume we discussed, the latte has this incredibly creamy texture and a much milder coffee flavor. It's definitely less intense than most other espresso drinks, which gives it massive universal appeal. I mean, it's loved by brandy coffee drinkers and highly experienced folks alike. Plus, because it only has that small, thin layer of foam on top, it acts as a perfect liquid canvas. That specific construction is exactly what allowed baristas to start pouring those intricate, beautiful designs, latte art, right into that highly creamy foam. So the crucial point is this simple cafe equation. Every single complex menu item you see at a coffee shop is really just a variation of this one formula. You start with the foundational espresso shot. Then you just add in the variables. Are you changing the extraction time? Are you adding water? Are you adding milk and foam? And that's it. Whether it's a short, sweet ristretto, a historically diluted Americano, or a creamy, art-topped latte, you are really just looking at the espresso building block interacting with water or dairy. It's a wonderfully logical system once you see the matrix behind it.
And that brings us to our final question for you. Which drink profile actually fits your morning routine best? Are you going for the bold intensity of a pure espresso, the prolonged smoothness of an Americano, or the rich comfort of a cappuccino? Tomorrow morning, when you walk into your local coffee shop and look up at that massive menu board, I challenge you to apply this new translation. Don't just order out of habit. Use the espresso family tree to figure out exactly what you want. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely enjoy your next perfectly ordered cup of coffee.